Ali Abdaal has never met me, yet he has rewired my brain. And as a neuroscientist, well, I can tell you exactly how. There are a lot of videos out there breaking down Ali's editing style, thumbnails, his color palette, and what he has on screen, in the hopes to reproduce his results. But I can tell you, none of that is actually what changed me, and none of that is why people follow him. So, what changed me were 3 things he did and still does that almost nobody tries to copy because, well, yeah, they're not easy to copy. In this video, let's talk about the neuroscience behind why they work and what you can take from them. Whether you want to build a channel or just stop living the wrong version of your life. You cannot aspire to a life you have never seen. And it has nothing to do with the lack of motivation or discipline. There's a concept in psychology called the possibility model. The idea is that your brain encodes role models, but only the relevant ones, as something called a possible self. A 1997 study showed that exposure to a relevant, attainable role model actively elevated people's self-views and their goals. However, this is not the case if the brain thinks it is unattainable. In other words, your brain only unlocks the path if it can picture someone like you walking it down. And this is where I understood something about myself. Before I encountered Ali's videos, I thought wanting more from life meant something was really wrong with me. I was smashing it by all the external metrics. I had a PhD, multiple papers, grants, but somehow I felt that something was missing. However, at the time, I only had the people around me to take as an example. And most of them were on the same path. And sometimes I felt even guilty of feeling like this. And I tried multiple times to shut it down because there were people out there who wished that they have what I did, but they hadn't managed yet. Then I started watching Ali, who at the time was a doctor with a Cambridge University education, which between you and I, well, you cannot get much better than that. So by traditional ways, he was at the absolute peak. And still he was pursuing something else and doing other things. And then what hit me was when he mentioned that when he asked other doctors what they would do if they won the lottery, it turned out that, yeah, many were not that happy in the profession. And this made me realize that this feeling was even more widespread than I thought. And there was this guy, Ali, who basically saw it coming for him as well. And while he did not have the exact answer, he knew he needed to do something about it. And here's the thing, almost every PhD I've ever met has a version of the same fantasy. You quit science, open a bakery or a restaurant, or learn to bake bread, or start selling feed pics online, or start a YouTube channel. And when the conversation gets to this point, we all laugh about it because, well, we all know that deep down we will never do it. And personally, I think it is because we lack visible examples of other paths. And if you cannot picture what you want, in a way your brain thinks, well, that it is unattainable. So once your brain sees one credible exit, it stops gaslighting you for wanting to take it. And for me, Ali was living proof that you can be traditionally successful but still want a different life. And in a way, it gave permission to the high achiever in me to, well, stray off the path. But permission to want and knowing this path is possible is not the same as believing it is possible. And this is the second thing Ali did. And it is the thing his old videos do better than the polished new ones. Permission tells your brain that you are allowed to want this. Proof, on the other hand, tells your brain that you can actually do it. They are 2 different mechanisms, and without proof, permission, well, goes nowhere. So, without any surprise, this is one of the most studied ideas in psychology, and it comes from Albert Bandura. The idea is that one of the strongest way your brain builds belief in its own capability is by watching someone like you succeed. However, there is a little caveat, and the key word is that the person needs to be like you. Watching a billionaire go up in space does very little for your brain. Actually, it just files it under irrelevant. Watching someone start where you started, struggle the same way you struggle, and end up somewhere different, well, that's something entirely different. Ali has been on camera since around 2017. Medical student becomes doctor, doctor leaves medicine, and a seemingly normal guy becomes a successful entrepreneur. Finds love, yeah, cute. And honestly, he does all of this in front of the camera. And the videos capture the transition, making his journey all the more relevant because many people can relate to his beginnings. And in all honesty, this is the part that matters. I remember I used to watch his videos during these long, repetitive science work. You know, the kind where the hands are needed but not the brain. If you're not a scientist, you would be surprised how much of our time as research scientists we end up doing repetitive manual work. But But anyway, whenever I watched his videos, a feeling came up, and it was always a pleasant one. It took me a while to realize what it was, but I think it was hope. And unknowingly, my brain was rehearsing his journey as if it were mine. So this is also why his old videos hit harder than the polished new ones. At least for me. It is also evidence that this person not so long ago was not that different from me, with similar restrictions. And this makes it even more believable that a similar transformation is achievable. So by watching Ali's videos for over the years, I was somehow injecting myself with a dose of, well, hero's journey. And let's admit, he's a bit of a walking, talking hero's journey. So in the process of watching, I was teaching my brain that this is not reserved for Harry Potter or Frodo, but it is also an option for, well, you and I. By the way, he has a line he says a lot, and that is journey before destination. So, well, hold on to that one. We are coming back to it soon enough. So far we got permission plus proof. Your brain learns it is allowed to want something different and that someone like you can actually pull it off. Well, that should be enough, right? Well, journey before destination, as Ali often says. And somehow this is underneath all of his videos. You don't see it? Well, let me explain. Persuasion research has known something for almost 40 years now. It is called the elaboration likelihood model from Petty and Cacioppo. And I'm sorry if I butchered that surname. The short version of this is that when your brain is deciding whether to take a message seriously, it does not just evaluate the message, it evaluates the messenger as well. If source credibility is high, meaning the messenger has been consistent over time, especially when there was nothing to gain from, then the brain processes the message deeply. But if the source credibility is low, the brain processes it peripherally and politely tunes it out. In other words, your brain is constantly running a background check on whoever is talking to you. And the way it runs that check is by looking at their backlog. Well, this is the one I think makes Ali credible in a way most creators never become. There is a backlog of his videos going back almost, well, a decade, where he was recommending the exact same things like books, productivity systems, ideas, long before there was any monetary incentive for him to be saying any of it. And he did not show up trying to do backflips with a six-pack. He brought himself to the table with sci-fi books, blogs, and some poop references.
Time for a poo.
And whether you find that interesting or not, well, it was clearly him. And this is where the message and the messenger have lined up across the years. Petty and Cacioppo would call this high source credibility. I would call it the backlog has done the work. And now there is a second piece of evidence, and this is connected to the first. When you watch his videos, it does not feel like he is selling you a conclusion. It feels like he is sharing the reasoning. He tells you what he tried, what worked, what didn't, what he is currently figuring out. That is public thinking. And generously, because he does not seem to gatekeep the process. This is also why when I try to describe the feeling of watching his videos, the closest thing that I could land on was it felt like advice from a good friend. Because friends think with you. The reason it felt friendly was because he was structurally doing what a friend does. And then there is the third piece, and that is that he does not hedge himself. If he wanted to sing on camera, well, he did that. If somehow he looked silly, he kept it. He showed up as himself, and that was what built the audience that actually fits him. So, in a way, hedging attracts the wrong people. And showing up as yourself, well, filters for the right ones. And don't we all, to a certain extent, hedge ourselves? Because we think that a particular thing we like is, well, not cool enough. And isn't this quality what we secretly all want? To put ourselves out there? And mind you, this is not just about YouTube, but it is also valid when we date or make friends. Yeah, we all want to be seen in our entirety and still be chosen, of course. However, out of fear of rejection, we learn to hedge and trim the parts we think are too weird to be accepted. And I think this part speaks to a primal part in ourselves, because he seems to be running on an internal compass and not on external optimization. Well, okay, I am sure that some of his decisions were made based on likes, negative comments, subs, sponsors, and the whole shebang that comes with social media and running a business. But it sure seems that he course corrects often to stay faithful to the compass. And I think this is the underlying reason of it all. But if you don't agree, well, feel free to correct me. The reason Ali rewired my brain without ever meeting me is that he gave my brain these three things in the right order. Permission to want a different life, proof that someone like me could build one, and enough consistency over enough years that my brain stopped second guessing whether to trust him or not. So if you want to be like him, either as a YouTuber or more as a way of life, let me ask you this question that I would actually like you to sit with. And it is the one that I am sitting with a lot lately. And that is, what are you running on right now? Is it internal signal or external pressure? Because if it is external, the backlog will not hold up over time. The tribe you attract will probably be wrong, and the wrong will not sustain itself. And yeah, I know this is neither quick nor easy, but rarely anything worth building in life is. And if you stayed on this video till here, well, let me tell you a little secret. Ali planted the idea to start the journey of mine. However, the jump starter that actually made me take action, well, if you are wondering how this happened, well, I break it down in this video here. And with this, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!